Welcome to Focus on B, the single-part video series where I take a look at a game that I might not necessarily want to let's play, but I definitely want to still talk about in a video, and this is Trackmania DS. Even though I swear to God the ROM image file was whatever, it said Trackmania Turbo when I selected it, except I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be the original one. Regardless, whatever, it's Trackmania on the DS. Although this is primarily just going to be me talking about Trackmania as a whole, it's just that's the one I find most fascinating because this is primarily a PC series. Nowadays, it does have console releases, absolutely, but it started out very PC, you know? And so it's weird that, like, it got, in 2008, I think it was the first time that it got a, like, non-PC release, and it was on the DS of all things. It was also eventually, I think, on the Wii as well. I think it was like this Race and Build, or whatever it was called, Build and Race. It was something like that. This is a game that is pretty much the most popular example of the... You're going to see that a lot, by the way. Very popular example of what you would call the track attack type racing game. So there's pretty much no opponents, you know, apart from, like, even the guys you're seeing right there, they're not really my opponents. They're just times, right? They're lap times. Well, not even laps. That's the thing. You're not completing laps. You're just doing these linear obstacle courses. It's basically... almost like a parkour type game, except you're in a car, of course. The controls are very tight, it's very arcade, and there's actually quite a bit of slip to this one in particular, despite the fact that the last car I drove, I guess it depends, really. They probably have different handling characteristics, and it's a very restart-heavy game. It's one of those games, the kind of game where you're going to see the starting bit of every level 100 or so times before you can do it right. And that's pretty much how I'm going to play this, because I'm going to keep doing this until I can beat this. So what's my relationship with these kind of games? Because, you know, I love racing games. I fucking adore racing games. I may not cover them super often on this channel because they're pretty tricky to get right in a Let's Play format. Oh, in a Let's Play? Oh, man, I can't imagine myself doing a Let's Play of a racing game ever. A Focus on B, sure, because it's just one thing. I'll change the track now. But how do I feel about games like this? Oh, Snow, that's going to be interesting. Well, you probably already know, maybe I shouldn't assume you already know, but I don't particularly care for lap times. I'm not a huge not the kind of person who, oh, that's good, it's nice and grippy, who wants to, like, do it all over, you know, I want to do that race again just to improve my lap time. It's like, no, I'm more about competition, about, like, having opponents to race against. But for whatever reason, I very, very distinctly remember being absolutely fascinated and almost obsessed with Trackmania. I didn't know it was even called Trackmania back then. All I knew it was that one game I played on my computer with the cool-looking car with the tracks that I found to be very odd and visually interesting. And then I realized, yeah, that was Trackmania all along. And, you know, there's a very distinct charm to roller coaster type track design in a racing game where you feel like you're a toy, right? It's why I always used to love, and I kind of still do really like, you know, the Hot Wheels type of games, right? And Hot Wheels Unleashed and 1 and 2 are very, very good games, actually. So I'm glad to see that kind of game is generally alive. And, well, how are these guys so fast? What the fuck? I'm holding down the accelerator. What am I doing differently? I mean, apart from not bumping into everything, that was awful. Let's do that again. It defaults to retry, so I don't even have to check the bottom screen because this is a DS game after all. And, you know, speaking of the fact that it's on the DS, it runs real smooth. I mean, you're seeing 30 FPS right now, but this is a 60 FPS for the most part DS game. And when it comes to fully 3D games, those are quite few and far between. The only other ones I know are, I think Mario Kart DS runs at that. I'm not entirely sure. I know Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing runs at that because that game is just absolutely insane. Come on. There you go. Let me change track. But other than that, it's quite rare for a fully 3D game to run that smooth on this system. And that's because really, I think the DS was a little bit underestimated as far as what it could do graphically. I mean, I think the DS is definitely a step above the PS1, even though it's very similar aesthetically speaking because of its low resolution and lack of texture filtering and such. But it's definitely like if they updated the PS1, if that makes sense, if they like remade it. Well, I know that's already a thing. It's called the PSX, I think, or no, not the PS. It was like the PS1, but spelled with like the one. You know what I mean? It was like this cut down, sort of, you know, slimmed down. Well, not slimmed down, but like differently stylized, smaller version of the PS1 released back in the year 2000. And yeah, essentially that's what a lot of these 3D DS games kind of look like a slightly more souped up version of the PS1 aesthetic, and I like it a lot. You know, I wonder what if there were a PS1 Trackmania game. That would have been quite the feat, technically speaking. Ow, I'm dead. And so again, these games rely on restarting. But the problem is I just can't really find myself too addicted to this kind of gameplay. I can't say it's badly done. All of the Trackmania games, for the most part, pull it off very well. They all run pretty damn smooth. They all have very tight controls. In fact, Trackmania 2 is visually, I think, one of the most mesmerizing driving games of all time. You can get fucking lost looking at that game, just watching gameplay videos or watching like those really elaborately designed, like just hold the accelerator and it flows through effortlessly type super smooth tracks. You know, those ones, the ones that are basically automated, that kind of stuff. You can totally get sunk into that because it's just something about the fluidity of the motion, the way the cars move on, like relative to the camera, the visual presentation as a whole, and despite the fact that generally you want to turn that shit off, even like the motion blur, really, like the motion blur is actually a huge part of the Trackmania aesthetic, at least in my head. Although it's really interesting how at first Trackmania was about these Nissan Skyline 2000, these really bulky Japanese-looking, almost like they were muscle cars, except not quite. And then it eventually became that slick go-kart F1 looking thing, Formula something. Not because there's more than just Formula 1, you know, there's like I think there was Formula C, Formula A, those kind of things, right? We're absolutely murdering these stages, but to be fair, these are the practice levels, right? They're not exactly meant to be all that difficult, because I literally just got this game like an hour ago or something, you know, and I've been playing it not too much, it's just for preparation for this video, because I just thought, you know, this would be quite interesting. And yes, I'm aware that the logo is supposed to be horizontal, but it's a DS game, so it's like, fuck it, I'll be clever, and it'll look better anyway for the thumbnail, framing-wise, so I made the logo vertical instead in the thumbnail, you might have noticed. Also, how you liking like some of the more custom logos that I've been making? You know, I mean, I think at this point, by the time you're seeing this video, I may or may not have started my Max Payne series, and you know, you can tell that it's not just like, I guess, Max Payne's face or whatever. It's actually like a painkiller. That was the idea behind the thumbnail, because, you know, that's kind of like his thing, painkillers, not to be confused with Painkiller, the best first-person shooter ever made. Well, one of the best. But, you know, I was actually planning on using like an actual painkiller as reference, but then I realized that would be kind of weird. I mean, I could have looked it up, to be fair, but all the photos of painkillers I could find weren't the ones that you really see in the game, so I was just like, fuck it, I just made up my own little bottle design, but that doesn't really matter. And I think for Shadowgrounds, if I really do end up actually doing a playthrough of that game, I made, okay, so the idea behind that thumbnail was that basically it's like a sphere that's half covered in shadow, and I just added those extra cuts to make it look cooler. Initially the cuts were on the top of it, but it looked like a fucking baguette, so I changed it so it's more like Sonic the Hedgehog or something, you know? Can you tell that like when you're playing a driving game, it's a little bit, you kind of run out of things to talk about quickly. But I mean, to be fair, it's not like there isn't much to talk about, because I think Trackmania is one of those beautiful examples of a game that is almost as engaging to look at as it is to play. Not this one in particular. I don't imagine that people are going to be, you know, getting sucked into and hypnotized by Trackmania DS of all games, but just the main Trackmanias, right? The ones that are actually on like PC, including like even the original, right? And I love, what was it, Trackmania Sunrise or Sunset, I think it was. Dude, I fucking love that aesthetic of like an early 2000s or actually mid 2000s game where you're driving like a kind of very middle class looking car, you know, not like some hypercar or whatever, on these very completely unrealistic Hot Wheels-esque tracks in a sunset sort of aesthetic. There it is. This is the look that I'm more familiar with, because this is generally what Trackmania looked like when I played it as a kid. Again, I haven't actually played much of Sunrise. It's just that that's the one that I've more recently discovered and really taken a liking to as far as the way it looks. It's weird. It's like, really, it's a game that I'm mostly interested in just because of the way it presents itself, which is kind of shallow. You generally shouldn't, you know, play a game just for the graphics, but it's like, well, not just for the graphics necessarily. I mean, clearly, the graphics in the Trackmania games must not technically be anything too amazing if they run so smooth, right? I mean, that's not to say that I find it interesting that some games like make a point about that when with a good enough PC, anything runs smooth. But I think the point is that on average, the Trackmania games run better. I don't know. What about the one that released more recently, the one that's just called Trackmania? Does that one keep that up, or does it have performance issues? I don't know. I've never played it, to be honest. It's now free to play on Steam, which to me, well, I don't know. I don't want to seem cynical and say that, oh, it's free to play, therefore it must be terrible. Because I'm pretty sure there was also like this United one, or Nations, or whatever it was called, which is also free to play, but it has a caveat. I think there's like, you have to wait a little bit before you can play a certain amount of races, or something like that. I'm not sure. But there was some sort of trade-off. But it's like, I can't say that, because it makes me sound kind of like an asshole to say that, oh, just because it's free to play, it's not good. Maybe it is. Maybe it's fantastic. I don't remember. I just checked the Steam page, but I don't remember if it had mixed reviews or if they were mostly positive. Because I swear to God, I remember seeing like a little bit of yellow, so it might be mixed in that case. But at the same time, I don't know if I really want to give it a shot. Again, I'm not super into this kind of stuff to begin with. I enjoy these games for a little bit, and then I put them down very quickly, you know? Even when they're at their best, because this is not Trackmania at its best. It's Trackmania at its most impressive, if you ask me. You know, this system running a game like this, which still looks quite good. They haven't completely, like, destroyed the graphics, because you can make anything run well if you make it look bad enough, of course. Well, that is kind of subjective, I guess. But at the same time, you know, the whole point about video game performance is that balance between it looking pretty good and running well. Some games will choose one over the other, and the results will be obvious. But I think there's definitely a beauty in finding that technical balance where it's like, okay, so the game looks as good as you can possibly make it before we start to drop frames, right? And I feel like this is a very good example of that, because I don't know, you'd think the DS could do better. Do I want to say that something like Mario 64 DS looks better than this? Well, that's debatable. Actually, maybe it does, but it doesn't run as good as this, that's for sure. Though, to be fair, it doesn't exactly... oh, fuck. I reset without even wanting to. Okay, are we at the point in this kind of game where basically I have no idea how to... You know, what if I could just do this? That is not... No, that is not the solution. So yeah, basically my opinion on these kind of games, they're very fun. And I understand why they have such a dedicated following. Ridiculously dedicated, like obsessive. It's insane how many people play this and how good they are at it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm fucking shit at this, you know? I really want to try and go for gold here, but I know it's probably going to not happen within, like, the span of this entire video. I've only been recording for 13 minutes. I could spend the next 7 minutes, because I usually want to have these be about 20 minutes. I could spend the next 7 minutes on just this one track, and I'll probably never get it, or at least while I'm commentating. Okay, I could do one of those things where, like, YouTuber focus mode, where I shut up for a bit and bring up the music and stuff, just to make it seem like I'm doing way better, when in reality, I'm probably going to do just as badly, to be perfectly honest. I really am not the kind of person who benefits from shutting up when playing a game. I'm just kind of trash, because I'm always talking to myself when playing video games anyway. That's why, actually, another reason as to why I started the Let's Play series, other than the fact that I just get to make way more content way faster. I mean, you have no idea how much I've always wanted to have a daily series. Now I can kind of finally do it properly. But it's also the fact that I talk to myself a lot when playing video games. You know what I mean? I'm one of those weirdos who, like, kind of treats even playing games in his own time like a Let's Play anyway. Like, I'll comment on certain things and and just totally voice my thoughts, regardless of whether or not, like, I'm alone in the house or whatever. I'll do it. That's just that's how I think, you know? Reset, come on, so glad there's a proper reset button. So I thought, fuck it, might as well do it. But yeah, you know, this level actually is a very interesting, it has a very weird look to it, because of all these, like, strange shapes and stuff going on, and it's a little bit sunsetty. And okay, sometimes I ask myself, how exactly does the AI just get that upper hand on a section where you think it'd be impossible for them to get it, because everything's so even? But look at this, look how varied all of our times are at this point. How does that happen? It was basically just a straight line with a tiny little bump. Is it like, it depends on maybe how much of the accelerator you hold down? Well, this is a DS game, which means there's only two options for the accelerator. It's either on or it's off. The DS did not have pressure sensitive buttons last time I checked, so You know, it's really just a matter of holding the button down and then not holding it down, right? Well, this music, I really hope this music isn't copyrighted, because I'm not sure if I get the vibe that this might be a series that uses copyrighted music. There's no singing over it, but I mean, okay, it's not like you can't copyright instrumental, to be fair, and that did not count in the slightest. I mean, hopefully me talking over it enough will counter that, although my episode of Love Free, this really great 2D platformer, it didn't get like a strike or anything, but it did YouTube took notice of the fact that there was some music in there, and it's like, it's cool. Maybe the video would be demonetized if I monetized these to begin with, but it's not going to get blocked from what I can tell. That's what really matters to me, that it's viewable by people. So hopefully that won't happen here. Although this game is quite a bit older, so maybe the copyright would have expired. Actually, no, that's not how it works. Copyright on music almost never expires. Well, it depends if it's a well-known enough artist. Like, you can still get sued for using, well, sued, but you can still get in YouTube trouble for using fucking Led Zeppelin or something, you know what I mean? Just ask Rick Beato. I haven't watched that guy in so long. You know what's really scary? The fact that, like, in his more recent videos, he's getting up there in the years, right? And you can start to hear his voice changing into, like, that kind of slightly higher pitched elderly man voice. And it's so weird, because like not too long ago he sounded like just kind of, a normal, slightly older guy, and then now all of a sudden it's like his voice is changing. It's almost disturbing, you know what I mean? Just witnessing that happen in real time. God, it's, you don't want that to happen, but it happens, and it's going to happen to you too, and it's going to happen to me too in many years. Oh God, no. Don't think about your own mortality while playing a fucking stage-by-stage based, and to be fair, this game very much pleases my OCD when it comes to, like, the fact that it's so rigid in its structure. It's like just track, section, theme, track, you know what I mean? It's very organized in that way, and I like that. I love a game like that, but sometimes it can go a little too far in that direction and becomes kind of boring and stale. It's all a balancing act. Video games are such a fucking balancing act for me between different facets of the way that they're designed and different approaches, right? I can't say, like, because I make it seem as if my favorite kind of game would be, I don't know, like a math like book or something where like it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No. It's just that I don't like games where things get a little bit washy between like different sections of the game, which is why I'm not a huge fan of stuff like Metroidvanias, because it's like you don't really have defined levels. Although there are games that can have elements of the Metroidvania style and still have levels, like Turok 2 and a lot of collectathons from the N64 era. That was a very popular approach back then, because they knew that, for example, Turok 2, I firmly believe that the game would not have been as well remembered at all if it were just a linear shooter, because the shooting in the Turok games has never been great. It was the exploration and the way the games were designed, and that's why Turok 3 is a little bit weird, because it's way more linear, and it still has the kind of just okay shooting of the Turok games, and so, it doesn't feel that special. And then there was Turok Evolution, which is kind of, I don't know, it existed. I'm kind of nostalgic for that game because I realized many years later that, oh yeah, that was the game I played for a little bit with the dinosaurs and the crossbow, that I played for a bit on my friend's PlayStation 2, because of course that game got a PlayStation 2 release, like everything did, because the PlayStation 2 was one of the best selling systems of all time, as we all know. And again, what the hell happened there? Is it because he maybe let go of the I don't know, but I did it. What time is it? Okay, we can do a couple more stages. Let's switch to a different theme. I want to keep things visually varied. So let's go ahead and actually exit the stage, change track, and switch back to maybe the Island B1. Let's try that theme. I'm surprised these levels are all just unlocked by default. Yeah, this car has a lot more slip to it, I noticed. So I think it depends on the surface of the road. So I'm guessing I can't just keep moving forward. We're going to have to actually, do this correctly. So we're going to have to take this corner and... yeah, so what was I talking about? Turok Evolution, while playing, I mean, at this point, right, it is related, though, to the way that this game works because of its structure, as I said. This is the exact opposite of the way I typically don't like games, as in this game is just very much level, track, and you think I'd love that, but then it gets just a little bit stale, just a little bit boring. I guess I'd prefer it to a game where I just don't know where the fuck I am half the time, because really, there's nothing more frustrating than when you're playing a game and you just don't know if you're playing it correctly, and not even in the sense that you're playing it as best as you can. Like here, obviously I'm not playing this correctly in the sense that I'm not going to beat a world record time, but I'm still doing it right for the most part. I'm on my way to achieving the same goal, which is to complete a lap or complete this track, right? It's as simple as that. But then you have games where you question whether or not you even understand the very premise of the way that the game is designed, and it's just like, okay, what the hell do I do now? Where do I go from here, you know? Let's just do a couple more tracks and we'll call it a day. And so with this kind of game, that's not to worry. And you know, I kind of, sometimes there's a part of me that feels that maybe my love of, you know, very linear kind of games, like linear shooters, racing games, Sonic games, even though, well, no, pretty much every Sonic game is like linear in its overarching structure. Sometimes the level design can be a little non-linear. In fact, it's actually, sometimes it catches fire because of that, which surprises me. Like, pretty much everyone loves Mania, but some people, not going to name anyone in particular, but I've heard quite a few people actually be a little bit, I feel overwhelmed by the number of alternate pathways and feel like the levels are aimless or something. I don't know, I think they're fairly well designed. This guy's so fucking grippy, damn. I mean, fairly well designed. That's a bit of an understatement, but still. But anyway, I feel concerned that maybe the fact that I play these kind of games, well, not this subgenre of racing game in particular, but just racing games in general, so much that I never developed the ability to think properly in a game where, like, you're supposed to think for yourself and know, like, the game's not just going to tell you this is where you go. You have to figure it out. Because honestly, I don't use that kind of ability very often in these kind of games. You don't really have to think about where to go. I know where to go just based on the fact that, hey, look, you know, I'm on a track, I'm going to hold down the accelerator, and now I'm going to move forward. And speaking of which, I think we've pretty much hit our time quota for this series. This is a very interesting track. None of the tracks look quite as insane as they would on the rest of the games because, I mean, obviously it's on DS. I wonder if I can actually jump down here. No, that would not benefit me in the slightest. So let's just complete this track, basically. See if we can beat the AI, of course. And, oh, nope, that's not going to be it. And we'll call it a day for this episode of Focus on B. But other than that, though, I am really enjoying this. I recommend you try this game out, although you should definitely still play the PC ones. Again, I don't have any opinion on the new PC Trackmania. Apparently, the originals are actually abandonware, like a lot of the older ones, and you can get them from my abandonware. They even come with some community patches to remove Star Force. Because if you're not aware, basically Star Force DRM is essentially malware. Like I think what it does is it renames your boot drive or something. I think Black Panther talked about this in his really old, not that old, but still in his video on what was that game? LA Rush, I think. Yeah. Basically, he had a problem with his PC where when he installed the game, and because that game used Star Force, essentially he wasn't able to go back into his PC. He had to go into the BIOS and change what it boots from, and yeah, lots of issues. Fortunately, I've never run into that issue myself because I now know, thanks to him and other people who let you know that, hey, you should probably never install a game with Star Force. Like, SecuROM is a bit of a piece of shit, but you can work around it. And Safe Disk as well. But SecuROM Star Force, that thing is downright malware, so avoid it. Do not download the original PC version of Trackmania and a lot of the other older Trackmanias because they all use Star Force, apparently. In all regions, not just in certain regions, like sometimes the Russian version will have it. No. All regions. So download the community updated, patched version, which should just be a simple executable from what I've seen. I was actually thinking of playing that one instead, but I thought, no. Let's be weird. Let's play the DS one. So either way, this has been Focus on B, the single-part video series, particularly the game that I definitely don't want to let's play, but I still wanted to do a video on, and this was Trackmania DS. I'll see you guys next time.